Okay, so now we are going to continue with our review of Un'Goro cards and some theory crafting for decks by discussing Druid. So first off, to set the scene for Druid, let's discuss the quest. So the quest for Druid is Jungle Giants. It is the quest is to summon 5 minions with 5 or more attack, and the reward is Barnabas. So Barnabas is a 5 mana 8/8 with Battle Cry. Set all minions in your deck to 1. Reduce the cost of minions in your deck to 0. So basically all your minions are free. So the idea here is to probably to ramp up ideally, maybe, and then play out some 5 mana cost minions, get Barnabas early, and then have spells to draw minions that allow you to draw as well, and draw into these big valuable minions that you can drop a lot earlier than you would normally be able to. The big caveat with Barnabas is that it only reduces the cost of minions in your deck. So when I first saw it, I was hoping that there'd be some exciting combo stuff with Druid. Maybe Malagos in particular is the card that at first jumped out at me. But you need to have the card in your deck, so without any way at the moment for us to actually put cards back in our deck from our hand, which is a kind of weird thing to think about, you are not reliably going to be able to get the Malagos combo off. Maybe there is still a deck that involves playing a rush to get the quest done, and then you have Malagos in your deck, and then you just spam card draw, right? And rush yourself to Malagos and drop Ancient of Wars and stuff to taunt in the meantime. That could definitely be a viable deck, but it's kind of just like when you actually draw Malagos, you lose, and that's not a good position to be in. So I'm not sure if we'll actually see anything like that. So one of the best minion. Okay. So we're gonna rate cards on a scale of 1 to 5 on both flavor and viability. So for Jungle Giants, I think we see enough druids that play expensive enough minions because they ramp up generally. So I think that Jungle Giants is definitely viable. One of the things to notice is that Jungle Giants will work with Jade once they get over 5 because it is summon. So we could well see Jungle Giant Jade decks where all of your minions in the late game are free, and you can have like a free Auctioneer and that infinite cycle Jade at the end, or something crazy like that. Yeah, so I think Jungle Giants is a 4 for viability. There's a lot of Druid decks. You don't have to make your deck very specific, like with the Hunter quest, in order to get the deck to the quest to work. The biggest downside of it is whether it's actually playable in the meta to play such a greedy deck, and how many 5 drops you can actually find that are good enough, or like 5 attack minions that are actually good enough to play without making your deck too greedy. That's kind of the weird balance we have to draw here. And for flavor, I really like I'm very disappointed that Barnabas doesn't reduce hand, because that would have made for some really awesome stuff. But I mean, Blizzard traditionally are not big fans of combo decks, so I think that's pretty much why they went with that approach. So for flavor, I'm going to have to give it a 3 because I'm disappointed in that. I still think it's a pretty interesting card and a pretty interesting mechanic. And one of the best cards to turn into a 0 cost minion is Tyrantus, which is the Druid legend, the other Druid legendary from the set. It is a 10 mana 12/12 beast that can't be the target of spells or hero powers. So Tyrantus, the biggest problem with Tyrantus, that's pretty obvious, is that when you play him, he does nothing. So it's pretty difficult. Like, it has no immediate effect on the board, right? It doesn't have taunt, it doesn't force your opponent to trade into it. The only way they can kill it is by trading into it, and because they can't kill it with spells. So they're just gonna ignore it and go face, and then you basically then need to taunt up your Tarantus afterwards, which is not the easiest ask. Druids generally don't run cards like Defender of Argus and Sun Fury Protector very often because they just have their own good taunts. So I'm not sure how viable Tarantus is going to be. I think one big thing is that it is a beast. So, for example, a Nuts turn that just basically finishes the game, which is possible in the second Druid deck that I have on the right, um, is after you complete the quest, you can play Tarantus for free and then play Menagerie Warden on your Tarantus. And then you have two 12/12s that can't be the target of spells or hero powers. And that's pretty insane. So, if it's huge late game for Beast Druid, which we could definitely see making a comeback this set. And we'll talk about these two decks a little bit after I've gone through all these cards. Okay, so Tarantus, um, for flavor, I'm gonna give it a 5. I really like that they've gone with most of these classes as having their um, big legendary drops being these dinosaurs. The beast stuff is maybe good enough for Druid. At least they have some synergy with it, unlike most of the other classes where it doesn't really make that much sense. Um, and for viability, I'm gonna have to give Tarantus a 2. To be honest, I don't really see it being played. I think there's a lot of stronger big drops that you can play in the deck where you rush for the quest, and I think it's only really viable in Beast Druid, which is iffy. And even then, I only put it in my Beast Druid because of so that we could talk about it more than anything. So yeah, I'm not that sold on Tarantus's viability. Next we have Giant Anaconda. Giant Anaconda is a 7 mana 5/3 beast with Death Rattle, summon a minion from your hand with 5 or more attack. So obviously, if you summon this out and then it dies, and then it summons another minion, that's going to be 2 minions for your quest. But Giant Anaconda is a 7 mana 5/3. And some of the things in Druid that you want to summon have battle cries, so getting them from your hand directly to the board without actually triggering their battle cries is a bit iffy. I just don't like Giant Anaconda at all, to be honest. I think it's too slow for even really control metas, and its effect is kind of bad because bringing out an Ancient of War that's only a 5/5 instead of a 5/10 or a 10/5 is bad. I don't want to do that. Yeah, Giant Anaconda, bad. That's all. 0 for viability, 1 for flavor because it's meant to work with the quest. I don't know. I don't even flavor. I don't like it. I just really don't like it. Okay, next we have Living Mana. This is a 5 mana spell. Transform your mana crystals into 2/2 minions. Recover the mana when they die. So this is a death rattle on the little like treants that you get, where when they die you get the mana crystals back as empty crystals, which is a pretty important thing. So the idea is that you get a powerful turn where you can flood the board with 2/2s, but then you get like very punished the next turn in the same way that maybe like Overload punishes you, because it's essentially overloading you for all your mana crystals, because those mana crystals come back as empty if your 2/2s die in your turn. So what your opponent can do is just push face and then let you trade your 2/2s. So you have initiative with the 2/2s in a sense like that, but unless they're setting up lethal for you with like living mana into Innovate Savage Roar or something like that, then it's questionable to me as to whether living mana is really going to be viable. So I think on viability I'm going to give living mana a 2. I think there's maybe some niche decks where it works, maybe some like a late game for some token decks. Um, and for flavor, I'm going to give it a 4. I like the idea of reversing the mana manipulation for Druid, turning all that ramp into direct minions, in the late game. Like we've seen it a little bit more with like Forbidden Ancient, the 1 mana 1/1 that gets plus X, where like basically uses all your mana crystals and becomes like a 10/10 if you paid 10 for it, right? So this is also another way to cash in on the ramp that Druid has, but this is a way of sort of making it so you spread wide on the board instead. The biggest problem with effects like these, I think, is that you don't actually get to choose how much mana you spend. It's just all your mana. You don't have a choice, and that's kind of really what makes it bad to me. Okay, next we have Evolving Spores. Uh, Evolving Spores is a 4-mana spell that says adapt adapt your minions. So the way I understand this is one adaptation on all of them, which is bad because most of the time you do not want a single adaptation. Obviously, there's the situations where this turns into Bloodlust and you get +3 attack, but that is fringe, and the chance of getting a single adaptation is low enough that I don't think you would play this just for that. Maybe in Token Druid, if we see that being a thing, which it could well be. It's not an archetype I've actually built here, but I think it definitely could be a thing. We might see Evolving Spores be pretty useful. It's kind of like a worse Soul of the Forest. Well, like it's better than Soul of the Forest sometimes, worse than Soul of the Forest sometimes. It's very hard to know what a board-wide adaptation like that, actually is going to do. And I think in the meta it's going to be a bit too slow, to be honest. So I'm going to have Evolving Spores as a 2 for viability and a 4 for flavor, because I like that it is fueling the token Druid decks. It's like there's 2 themes they've gone with here in Druid, is the ramp and the token themes, and the ramp being a bit like beastie. So yeah, I like Evolving Spores, but unfortunately I don't think it's that great. Next we have Shell Shifter. So Shell Shifter is a 4-mana 3/3 with a choose one effect on it, where it transforms into a 5/3 with stealth or a 3/5 with taunt. So both of those are beasts, and if you transform it into a 5/3, it will count towards the quest. So those are important things to note. 5/3 stealth for 4 is not that bad. We're used to paying 3 mana for the 4/2 Jungle Panther, so this is a little bit more expensive, which we're used to paying for the versatility of having the choose one, right? Although sometimes we don't. On like Living Roots, we just don't pay for that versatility, and Wrath we don't really pay for the versatility. So yeah, I think that Shell Shifter might see its place in Beast Druid because of the fact that both minions are beasts, or both sides of it are beasts. It's 4 curve for beasts, which are now losing Savage Combatant, which is obviously a very strong card for them before. And it will help towards the quest, and you don't have to commit to playing it for the 5/3 stealth if the 3/5 is better for you in matchups against aggressive decks. The taunt might be better. I mean, the taunt is basically a better Sen'jin Shieldmaster, right? And back in the long time ago, Ramped Druids used to sometimes run Sen'jin Shieldmaster. So Wild Growth on 2, Shell Shifter on 4, well on 3. It could be a strong play. And yeah, I like Shell Shifter. I think I'm going to give it a 3 for viability. I'm a little bit wary on Druid as a whole, and a 4 for flavor. I think they've implemented the choose one mechanic here quite nicely. If you get this with Fandral on the board, it is a 5/3 stealth with taunt. Obviously, stealth and taunt really don't work together. They're very opposite mechanics there. But sorry, not a 5/3. It's a 5/5. But a 4-mana 5/5 is pretty decent. Yeah, so there's some Fandral synergy, but they've made it so that it's not ridiculous when you get it with Fandral, like many other choose one effects. Yeah, so next we have Earthen Scales. Earthen Scales is a 1-mana Druid spell that reads, give a friendly minion +1/+1, then gain armor equal to its attack. So this kind of intuitively is meant to be a life gain mechanic, kind of for druids that want to go like the ramp gameplay style, because the bigger your minion is, the more life you're gaining, essentially. I really think Earthen Scales is very difficult to fit into a deck, to be honest. maybe sometimes in like a deck that wants to use it for gadgets and draw now that you don't have living roots. But I am very wary of Earthen Scales. I mean, like even Raven Idol is going away, I believe. So we're not even going to see Earthen Scales from Raven Idol shenanigans. I'm I don't really think Earthen Scales is very good. I'm going to give it a 1 for viability and, to be honest, a 1 for flavor because it just seems weird in Druid. Like, healing makes more sense in Druid than gaining armor. So, I mean, the armor does really nothing other than taking you above 30 sometimes. So, yeah. So I'm not a big fan of Earthen Scales. Next we have Verdant Longneck, one of the first cards revealed in the set. And now we can kind of make a bit more sense of it in the context of the quest and some beast synergies that we're seeing. So Verdant Longneck is a 5 mana 5/4 and it has Battle Cry Adapt. It's also a beast. So the adaptations, as I've said, I'm not a big fan of this. I don't really like paying 1 mana for Adapt here because essentially Verdant Longneck is a 5/4 and a 5/4 is really only worth 4. So I think paying 1 mana for that is not very good when I could rather just play a Druid of the Claw or Bitter Tide Hydra in my like Beast Druid at least. I think maybe this sees some play in decks that are trying to get the quest, but then you're playing a suboptimal minion just to have an extra 5 attack minion, which is, I think it's pretty iffy. I think Verdant Longneck is a 2 for playability, and to be honest, a 1 for flavor because I don't like Adapt, and it's just kind of weak. I mean, if you get Taunted Booty Bay Bodyguard, that's a bad card. Otherwise, it's a 5 mana 6/5. That's a bad card. It's like there's not many effects that make it a good card. Um, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a 5 mana 5/7, which is, I mean, it's better than a Pit Fighter, but yeah, not sold on Verdant Longneck. Could be good in Arena, but I'm mostly focusing on Constructed here. Next we have Elder Longneck, the smaller cousin of Verdant Longneck. However, Elder Longneck is a 3 mana 5/1, so only really smaller on the health side, and it has Battle Cry if you're holding a minion with 5 or more attack, adapt. So, we get the holding mechanic, the only card in this set that has that holding mechanic that we've seen before in Dragon decks. Obviously, this is just meant to go in the quest deck. It activates the quest at a really cheap cost, 3. Getting the adaptation on this could be strong. You can get a 5/4. So, okay, let's go through the adaptations that are good for this. So, plus health is good for it. Divine Shield is good for it. That basically turns it into a better Scholar Crusader. +1/+1 is okay. 3 mana 6/2 is it gets traded up too easily. It's okay, +1/+1's bad. Stealth is okay as long as you're facing a deck that doesn't have AoE. Can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. It probably gets traded up from whatever they have on board. So if you have board, it's okay. If you don't have board, at least it can't be pinged. So yeah, maybe that's okay. So that's 3 that are like really okay. Well, 4 if we count the stealth. +3 attack is bad. We don't want an 8/1. Taunt is bad. We don't want anything attacking to this. I mean, we'd much rather have it stealth than taunted. Wind Fury is bad. It's not going to survive. It has 1 health. What else? There are 10 adaptations. Yeah, anyway, the point is, the +1/+1 plants, or the summon 2 plants when it dies, is kind of bad. I don't think that summoning plants is worth it, really. You're basically playing 3 mana for 3 1/1 plants, essentially, because they're going to kill this long neck with any ping or anything like that. Yeah, I think it's fringe for some of the quest decks. I have 2 of it in my Beast Druid deck, because it's maybe if you need beasts and minions to complete the quest, then it can be okay. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a bit iffy. So, yeah, so I'm going to give it a 2 for viability. I don't believe in the Beast Druid that much. And a 4 for flavor, because I think is an interesting use of adapt, but it's kind of very high variance on whether the adapt is good or not. And lastly, for Druid, we have Tortollan Forager. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with Battle Cry at a random minion with 5 or more attack to your hand. So this is like a beefed up babbling book for Druid that gives you minions that go towards the quest. So we're actually seeing this like mechanic a fair bit in that we're getting these early drops that give you random cards that help contribute to the quest in some way, either with the random card or themselves. We saw that in Jewel McCaw in Hunter, and we see it in Priest and Mage as well. Well, Mage just already had Babbling Book, which was the card that helps them. Anyway, we'll get to that later. So it's Tolerant Forager. Adding a random minion with 5 attack to your hand, on average, I'd say that minion's pretty bad, to be honest. There's a lot of bad minions. You could get Magma Rages, which, although it is the card we named our podcast after, it is not a good card. So I think Totalan Forager is pretty iffy. I have it in one of my decks just because I want to test it out, but I think on average the result is going to be bad. I mean, you could get that third Ancient of War. Like, that's a good case scenario. Cinereus. Yeah, it's... I don't know. I don't think Totalan Forager is going to be good enough. I'm going to give it a 2 for viability. I don't really like the just random effect. If it was Discover, it would be interesting. Probably a little too good. And yeah, and for flavor, I like that it's a cheap way of curving out into the quest without just basically always having to ramp, because obviously this card doesn't really fit with ramp. It contests wild growth and basically the cards you want to play on too. So yeah, so I'm going to give it a 3 for flavor. So 2 for viability, 3 for flavor. I think that was what I said. Yeah, anyway, so let's discuss the decks. So this first deck we have is just of a heavy ramp theme, ramping into cards like Ancient of Law, Ancient of War, Cinereus, Coon, and Yogg eventually, because we have so many spells in. So the idea with this deck, it also has Genzo the Shark in from Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. So for those who don't know, Genzo is a 4-mana 5/4 that when he attacks, each player draws until they have at least 3 cards in their hand. So the idea is that Genzo is card draw late in the game. When you complete the quest and all your minions are free, you can dump them and then attack with Genzo, and you get a lot of value if Genzo is at least surviving. Otherwise, Genzo is a way of helping you curve out and complete the quest. We also have Bright-Eyed Scout in here, which is a 4-mana 3/5 that draws you a card, and that card then has its cost changed to 5. So post the completion of the quest, you're always going to be able to play minions plus that card. So because you ramp up, you know you can always play the card that you draw with Bright-Eyed Scout on the same turn as it. And the only things that are really, like, there's some really bad cards to draw, right? Like Innovate, I mean, you're literally making a 0-mana spell, a 5-mana spell, and then all it gives is you is -3 mana. Yeah. So, I mean, that's literally an unplayable thing to draw with Bright-Eyed Scout. But I think it could be good in this deck that's very, very heavy on creatures. So so this deck is very heavy and wants to sort of outvalue the opponent by just keep dumping large creatures on the board after completing the quest. To that extent, we also have Ancient of Law and Ancient of War in this deck. Ancient of Law is great because when your cards are 0 mana, it's a 0 mana 5/5 that draws you a card, which is likely a big creature you can then play alongside it. So it's a way to flood the board a lot easier. Coon is some basically late game life gain for this deck. Most of the time, you're generally not going to need the extra armor because your stuff is going to be so cheap. Nourish is great just for card draw. I mean, you can draw, and once you complete the quest, most of those minions are going to be playable. Lotus Agents discovers you a Druid, Shaman, or Rogue card. So there's a lot of decent cards you can discover with that. I think one of the biggest weak problems I had with this deck was actually finding enough really good late game minions to put in. With Ragnaros, the Fire Lord rotating out, there's actually not that much great late game. I really can't see this deck being better than Jade Druid, to be quite honest. I think this deck is pretty weak overall. Oh, it's actually missing one card, I just noticed. But yeah, I mean, you really just want late game threats, and I kind of felt it was underwhelming for late game threats. Yeah, so I'm a little worried for the quest in this kind of deck. And in fact, it kind of makes me maybe rethink the rating of the quest. I think it might actually be just weak. Yeah, maybe it's best with Jade Druid, to be honest. We'll see. Uh, and then the other Druid deck we have here is less on the ramp theme, more on the beast theme. So it has just straight up curving on the beasts, and because we don't really have great 3 cost beasts, because we have Druid of the Flame rotating out, I had to go with Elder Longneck to help complete the quest as well, because this deck still runs the quest for like ridiculous Tyrantus turns. But overall, this deck is just about curving out with beasts, and then hopefully you have the board enough that Menagerie Warden procs to give you another minion. Obviously, Menagerie Warden will count towards the quest if you summon another minion that costs 5. So like if you go Stranglethorn Tiger and then you play Menagerie Warden is counting 2 towards the quest. And if you haven't finished the quest by then, I'd be very surprised with this deck. This deck is a deck that will very aggressively compete the quest. One of the interesting cards is that this deck is a little bit tokeny in the earlier game. One of the cards I'm running is Ravasaur Runt. It's a card I like a lot. I'm not sure if it fits enough in this deck. It is a beast. It's a 2-mana beast that's a 2/2 Battlecry adapt if you have 2 other minions. So the idea is that once you're already flooded on board, Ravasaur Runt can be a 2-mana 2/5, a 2-mana 2/2 Divine Shield. I mean, we know Minibot was good. 3/3, a 2-mana 3/3, a 2-mana 2/2 that summons plants when it dies. I think the adaptations get better the earlier they are played on minions, and I think on Ravasaur Runt the adaptations could be quite strong. So that's why we've gone for that. The other big MVP in this deck that might well make Beast Druid viable as a very good aggressive deck is Bittertide Hydra. It's a 5-mana 8/8 that has the downside of every time it takes damage, it deals 3 damage to you. So if it takes 8 increments of 1 damage, it will deal maths. It will deal 24 damage to you. So the idea is that it could basically kill you, but honestly I think it's big enough that it'll hopefully kill your opponent in this deck before it kills you, and it could be a troublesome card, but we'll discuss it in particular a bit later. So yeah, I mean, this deck is really just a curve deck with Tyrantus as a big finisher if you even get there in the late game. Mark of Yashar is obviously quite nice to actually have some draw and buff to help you contest board. Yeah, so that's all I really have to say about Druid. It's very hard to judge Druid. I don't think it's going to be one of the top tier classes. I don't think the quest is that great because I don't think there's that many great minions that you really want to play for 0 mana. One of the other things I was contemplating, didn't really try build, was a Cthulhu Druid that uses the quest. You have things like Dark Arakoa that help you get towards the quest, and obviously you still have your Ancient of Wars. The idea being that you could play a 0 mana cost Cthulhu as a late finisher. I think that might be one of the ways to make this quest work, but overall I'm not that excited about this quest, and not that excited about Druid. I feel like the most fun to play is going to be Token Druid. We've seen some other token cards in the neutrals that are going to help Token Druid, and that could be one of the most fun Druids. But yeah, I'm not that big a fan of their class cards. So yeah, that's all I have for Druid. Please stay tuned, or follow and subscribe and like and all those things to let me know that you want more of these videos, and just let me know anything do you think I've gotten wrong about these cards, and you can always come back to these videos and laugh at me when Evolving Spores is OP and Blizzard has to nerf it because it's so amazing. And with Giant Anaconda is the best thing that's ever happened to Druid, which I highly doubt. Yeah, so that's all. Thanks, and